Good morning Internet, this is Michael from Trike Bike, and today we're going to put together a Meet One Breeze Pro model. Now this comes in two separate boxes, big heavy box with the frame, a lighter box with the basket and other accessories. Let's start by opening each box and removing the contents. These big boxes can be difficult to open sometimes because they're not only taped but they're also glued inside. Okay, we've got some large foam packaging that we need to remove. One thing I can say wholeheartedly about the Meet One tricycles is that there's no better packaged tricycle available. They do a fantastic job. Okay, I've removed quite a lot of the packaging. We can now start pulling out things like the wheels and remove the plastic covers off the sides. Here is another rear wheel, our other rear wheel. I'll remove the remaining foam. Okay, now I've got the box mostly empty. We can go ahead and lift the tricycle out. Now what most customers would do would be to cut the cardboard and push the sides down. We just lift it out here because we've got the advantage of having the crane to help us lift. Okay, now we've removed everything, we have easy access to the tricycle to start our assembly. Okay, I'm going to start by removing the seat. This will enable me to lift up the handlebars. For now, we'll just carefully put them over the side. We can remove the foam and put the seat back in. Once the seat is in and down, we can lock it in place. That way we can use it to help lift the tricycle off the ground. Okay, at home you'd have a friend help you hold it up. Here it's a lot easier because we have the tools. I'm going to lift it up off the ground. Now the first thing we need to do is open up the frame. So the frame is folded at the moment. It's secured back against the rear of the frame. So I'm just going to use our cutters and disconnect a couple of the cable ties that are holding it in place. There's a block on the front we need to remove as well. So with all of these removed, we can now open the frame. Okay, so carefully we'll grab it. We'll support the handlebars at the same time, and we'll just bring everything around. You can hear it just click into place there. I'm going to remove the covering. I've removed that. Now we can click the frame and secure it in place. Got to make sure that's pushed in firmly all the way. I've also noticed here the chain has fallen off, so I'm just going to loop the chain on for now, and we'll get to fixing it properly shortly. While I've got the bike in this position, I'm going to start by removing a few things. The front mudguard is tucked away in here. We'll put that to one side. Now I'll start to remove some of this foam packaging, which is to protect the tricycle during shipment. Remove some of this so we can get access to the front handlebars, so we can put the handlebars on. Be really careful when you're doing this so you don't scratch the paint. Now move position of the tricycle so it's held a little bit firmer so I can video this, but I'm going to start by removing the top of the handlebar clamp. So there's 4 bolts, M5 size. Now you need 2 hands to do this most of the time, but what we're going to do is lift up the handlebars, and we want to position the handlebars so they can go on the clamps in the correct direction, but we also want to make sure that we're not overstressing these cables. So it's a matter of juggling a few things around to get the best possible position. Now in this case, this is looking pretty good to me, so I'm just going to get the clamp on. So I'm just going to get it nipped up gently. I'll put in the other bolts, and then we'll rotate the handlebars up into their desired position. So that's still loose, it can move at the moment. What I want to do is to go around to the back, and I want to lift this shaft up because that gives you the best riding position. So I'm just going to go in front of the camera. We can loosen that off, give it a bit of a wiggle, we can lift the handlebars up. I'm just going to tighten that. We'll bring it back around, and I'm going to lift the handlebars up, make sure they're sitting fairly central. They have to be in the middle, and I'm just going to nip those up before we come back and tighten them properly. I'm now going to come back with our normal M5 Allen key and just check the tightness of the handlebar clamps. You want an equal gap on the front and the rear. So if you have the front with a big gap and the back with a touching or a small gap, it won't clamp properly. So it's really important that we get these centralised and fairly firm. Normally I do this in a different position, but because we're doing the video, it's easier for me to do it differently so you can see. But we're going to remove the front basket bolts. There's 4 of them, and again they're M5. That one's a bit tight. And when I've removed the bolts, there's a little plastic plate on that. That gets removed, you don't need to use that. I'm now going to mount the front basket. So we need to lift up the lid. There's a plastic insert, often easier just to completely remove that at this stage, and that'll give you access quite easily. So I'll remove that, and then using the bolts we just removed, we can then come back, position our front basket, and just get the bolt started again. Now you need to make sure it's central because it can move a little bit, and we want to make sure it's level, like it's vertical when it's on the bike, so the top of the basket will be horizontal. I've just lined that up. I'll just tighten up. So I've got those 4 bolts tight. Now the front basket is on and secure. Now the plastic insert that we just removed needs to go back in, but before we do that, there's a little clamp at the bottom here that we need to remove. So this is M4 Allen key bolts, so we'll just remove them. Might just use a tool to make it a bit faster, if it'll fit. Okay, we've got that out. Now while we're here and we've got access, we're also going to put on the front light. So the front light can be found in your box of accessories. So you'll get nuts and bolts and different things. I've located the front light. Okay, so we can just remove this nut and bolt from the front of the basket. I'm going to put the bolts through the bracket at the front, through the frame, and I'll do up that nut on the rear. So when we go to tighten this light, it's an M5 Allen key on the front and a 10mm spanner on the rear. I'll just get everything lined up, rotate the light around so it's sitting in the correct position. Okay. Again, extra hands is useful. Once we've got that firm, we can then further go on and adjust the light and then tilt it backwards and forwards to suit. While we're here, before we put the basket in, I'm just going to find the cord for the light, and I'm going to connect those two together. So they're very fragile pins, so you need to locate the little cutout. Once it's located, push it straight in together. Don't put it on an angle or it'll give you problems. Okay, while we're here and before the basket liner goes in, I'm going to put a couple of cable ties in this position, and that'll just protect that cable from any damage in the future. And we're doing this now because it gives us really good access before the basket liner goes in. Just cut off the excess of the cable tie and then rotate the cable tie around. That way you're moving the sharp parts that you cut off, you're moving it away and you won't get hurt. We can now put in the basket liner. So I'm just going to bring that over and drop it in. It's a really tight fit, so you have to jiggle it backwards and forwards. Because it's plastic, you can bend it. Okay, that's got it. Okay, I'm just looking inside now and I can see we've got it lined up. Now we've got it mounted in, I'm going to use the bracket and the small M4 bolts to secure the basket liner into the front basket. So I do a little bit on the front, a little bit on the back, because what we're doing is pulling the basket liner down. Okay, that's nice and firm. You can just check it's mounted properly. Okay, I've got the front wheel. We need to start by removing the wheel nuts, wind them all the way out, and we need to slide the washer and security tab over. We need to do the same on this side. Once we've got it positioned, the disc goes on the same side as the brake caliper. So just come around and gently lift everything up in place. So you need to align the disc itself with the caliper as it's going in. Once you've got it in, we can then tighten the bolts to stop it falling out. I'm just going to show you exactly what I mean by the washer and a security washer. So here is a security washer and it has a tab on it, and that tab faces the fork and it goes into a little hole. What that effectively does is if the front wheel nuts ever come loose, it helps hold the front wheel into the front fork. It's just a safety thing. Not all tricycles have them, this one does. I'm going to leave these firm but loose for now. I'm going to wait till I put the tricycle on the ground to push the wheel up, and then I can tighten everything. That way it's nice and firm and perfectly mounted in the front forks. Okay, off camera I've just lifted this up onto our workbench. So this is a normal way I assemble. It's much easier than being on the ground. While it's on the workbench, it means there's weight on the front wheel. So I'm just going to tighten that up so I don't forget later. I just saw the fork move slightly when I tightened, so I'm just going to loosen it and then push down. So I'm going to push down on the fork, nip it a little bit, go to the other side, nip it again, push down. Okay, now it's on tight, the wheel remains vertical. We can now go to the back of the tricycle, and there's a lot to happen in this area. So we've got to fit the wheels, we've got to fit the rear basket, we've got to fit the battery, we've got to fit the rear rack for, sorry, not rear rack, the rear rest for your back. We'll start in the middle, we'll fit the battery first. Okay, when you take the battery out of its plastic bag, you'll find in there another small bag with keys. You'd be surprised how many people don't see that. They throw everything out and they've got to go through the trash later to find their lost keys. To fit the battery, we simply come in from the front, or you can come in from the back, but either way is easy now. Get it mounted and then push it back. It's now flush on the end, which means it's in position. You have to lock the battery on. If you don't, the battery can move forward when you're going over bumps and cause problems for you. So lock the battery on. You've got 2 keys. Do not lose them. If you lose them, you've got to get a brand new lock. You can't just get keys cut. When I'm putting the tricycles together, I always put a cable tie through the keys and position it on the frame. Because you're building at home, you can put them in a drawer or somewhere where you're not going to lose them, but that's where we put them for our customers. On the rear here is some metal tabs. This is used for part of the shipping. They need to be removed. You get a large 14mm spanner, which you can use, undo these bolts, and that metal tab will come off and can be thrown out because it's not used on the tricycle. That one's a bit tight. We'll use a gun. I'm now going to go around and do the same on the other side. Okay, we're now going to fit the rear basket, which goes on here, and with the rear end assembly I like to work from the centre out. So we'll start with the basket first. It doesn't matter really which way these bolts go, it's whatever feels the most comfortable for you. Again, an extra set of hands will make this much easier. Once I've got that started, it makes it easy. So again, leave these loose until you have all of the bolts into position correctly. That way the rear basket assembly can move around. Okay, 2 more bolts. Okay, now I've got them firmly in place. It's still loose. I'm just going to step back and make sure the back basket is sitting level. I'm going to go ahead and tighten those bolts. Okay, a lot of noise. That's now completed. I'm going to go on to the mudguards. Okay, with the mudguards there is a left and right. Always make sure the reflector's pointing to the back. Remove the plastic covering. I'm just going to prepare this. So on top of the frame here, on the rear disc area, we have a small nut and bolt. We can remove them, position the guard in the correct place. We'll mount the nut and the bolt correctly. I've just got those finger tight, and you'll notice there's a lot of movement in there. I line up the bar on the back of the mudguard itself with the top of this bar, and that just keeps them nice and level. So it's a 10mm on one side and an M5, M5, yes, M5 on the other side. Going to go ahead and do the same on the other side. Okay, we're going to mount the wheel to the rear hub, 4 bolts. These bolts are an M10 bolt, which means they've got a 14mm head on them. So use the large T-bar spanner, which we used before, to get them in. In our case, we just use the electric driver. You'll see they've got blue on the bolt. That's a Loctite, so when they're inserted, they actually lock into the hub and stops the bolt from coming loose. Okay, I've got the 4 bolts that we need. We're now going to fit the rear wheel. Bit of a juggle to move it around and get it in there. Get the bolts started. We need to put all 4 in, leave them loose to start with. And then when we have them all in, we can come back and tighten them up. Okay. That has this wheel securely mounted. We can spin it. We can see that it's aligned quite well to the mudguard frame. Just a little bit of a touch there, but this is plastic and it's been held quite tight in the packaging. So we'll just leave that for a little while and that'll come out, especially when it gets into the sun. Now, we're now going to fit the little hubcaps. So you'll find them in their own bag. There's 2 of them. And they go on the outside, but before we fit them, we need to remove these 4 bolts, and they are an M2.5 Allen key. Okay, I've got them removed. We can position our little cap and we'll just align it with a hole. Again, put 1 bolt back, but leave it loose. You want to have some movement there so every other bolt can go in without any restriction. Now it's important to remember that this little hubcap is plastic. So if you over tighten this, all you're going to do is deform the plastic. So you don't want to do that. You just want to nip everything up firmly. When you get 100 kilometres or so on the tricycle, then come back and just check it. So I'm just going to tighten that a little bit. Yeah, so when you get 100 kilometres or so on the tricycle, just come back and just give them a double check and they'll be good for the life of the tricycle. You won't need to check them too many times. So we've got this wheel on in position. I'm going to do exactly the same to the other side. Okay, I've got the wheels on. I'm just going to go around and check the tyre pressures. If you want a nice soft ride, sit them at about 16 psi, 20 for average riding, and you can go up to 25 for harder riding. As they come, this has got 7.9, which is definitely not enough. Right on 20 psi. So that's what we're going to use for all 3 of these. Now, something interesting, this valve stem is not sitting properly. put some more pressure in this and we'll work it out. There you go, wiggle it around, it's coming out nicely. Okay, we've got our 20 psi. Sometimes with the fat tyres, the tubes can get pulled in. That's a matter of just wiggling them around. Front wheel, same pressure. It's got 15 in it. 20.1, that's close enough for me. So in summary now, we've got the rear wheels on, we've got our rack on. I'm happy with everything at the back. The only thing I want to complete while I've got it up on the bench is the backrest, and then I'll get it down onto the ground and we'll put on the rear vision mirrors and finish setting everything up. Okay, we're just going to fit the seat back. So we'll fit the brackets loosely. 2 bolts on each side. I'll fit the same bracket on the other side. Now the secret is to keep these loose for now, because there will be quite a bit of fiddling to get the seat back into the correct position, and there's a lot of movement in this, so you can slide these back all the way, forward all the way, and then you can also adjust the base of it as well. Now fitting the seat back itself is a bit difficult with one hand because it's pretty top heavy, so you may benefit from getting somebody else to help you, but you've got a lot of different positions that you can fit this in, so it can move up or down as well as backwards and forwards. Just going to get a couple of nuts on here to secure it a bit better. I'll do the same on the other side. Now before we tighten this up completely, there's a bit of movement in the backrest. So we position the backrest and we put this smaller bolt through and just nip it up before we do these up, and that just makes the backrest firm. I'm going to do it on both sides. Now I'm going to go ahead and tighten up the remaining bolts. I'm going to do the same on the other side. Okay, we've got it down. We're just going to finish off the last few things. First of all, we're going to fit the rear vision mirrors. The hard part with fitting the rear vision mirrors is actually working out which side goes where, because the mirrors can rotate in all directions. So if I go on this side and position it, it doesn't seem to be right. If I do it on this side and I reverse the mirror, then that seems to be in a nice position. So we'll start with that. So we slide up or turn up the gold part, the fitting, and then we can get the thread started, wind it on till it gets firm. So it's firm there, just go up a little bit more. No, that's it. So we're going to then wind this down. Now this is tilted back a little bit, so I'm going to release these 2 screws, move it forward just a fraction, and then tighten everything up. So I'm going to start first by locking it in position. So we do that and the rubber grommet slides down and over. Then we're using an 8mm. Just going to loosen that a little bit, and that'll enable me to turn the mirror forward. And then I can adjust the mirror to suit. I'm going to do the same on the other side. We'll start by winding the lock nut up. It's getting firm there, so I'm going to wind the lock nut down, nip it up. And again, this mirror is leaning back a little bit, so I'm going to release one of the bolts, rotate it around, tighten it up again, push the grommet down, and finally turn the mirror back into a normal position. I'll now rotate the display screen up. Now normally you'd take the plastic off now, and we've pretty much finished the installation and assembly of everything on this bike. A couple of exceptions. We've got a little lock that comes with it. This goes on underneath the seat. Some of our customers are really short, so it won't fit, so I leave that off for now, and then it's due now to go for a test ride. Okay, I've just gotten on for a test ride. Tried to turn the bike on, but the battery was turned off, so I've just turned it on. And yep, we've got power. Just going to change the gears into something more practical. Now we're pedalling away. We'll open our roller door. Let's go out and give a test ride. So first gear, second gear, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh. So our gears are changing nicely. Back to third. Going to use a bit of throttle to get up this hill here. We're in first at the moment electrically, so we're not going to be going all that fast. I'll just give it throttle only, and as expected we're scooting along. We're in stage 2 electrically, and yep, we're going along, everything's nice. Well, I'm pretty happy with this. We've put the Meet One Breeze together, and I've just done a quick few laps up and down the car park here, but I'll take it out on a better test ride shortly before we put this into stock and make it available for a new happy customer. Everything seems to be working. Both the brakes are working, the throttle works, gears work. I'll just have to adjust the mirrors and then we'll be right. It'll go to a happy owner in a new home. Anyway, I'm Michael from Trike Bike. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this quick assembly video of the Meet One Breeze